بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا وسيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم آمين. So we continue with the sharh of Taqreeb al-Tadmurriyah by Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala rahmatan wasi'a, and we were in the middle of studying and explaining the madhab of some of the Mu'attila. We covered the Asha'ira, we covered the madhab of the Asha'ira, and then we studied and we covered the madhab of the Mu'tazila and their shubuhat, and then after that we moved on to the madhab of the Jahmiyyah, and now we move on to At-Ta'ifa al-Rabi'a, the final and the fourth and final group or sect from the Mu'attila. And they are غُلَاةُ الْغُلَاة من الفلاسفة والجهمية والقرامطة والباطنية وغيرهم. So they are the extreme philosophers. Okay, the extreme philosophers, and some of the Jahmiyyah and some of the Qaramita and some of the Batiniyah. So some of the and the Batiniyah. So then the Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala, in his usual style of explaining, he's going to mention their madhab, what they believe in, their shubha, and then how to respond to their shubha. So he says, وَطَرِيقَتُهُمْ أَنَّهُمْ أَنْكَرُوا فِي حَقِّ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى الْإِثْبَاتِ وَالنَّفِي. Okay, so if you remember the Jahmiyyah, okay, they negated and they denied ماذا? They denied النفي. Sorry, they described Allah with nafi. They described Allah with negation only, okay, and not with any affirmation. So they said that Allah Azza wa Jal is not, is only described with absolute negation, okay, and He's only described without He's described with absolute existence, okay, without any conditions. That was the Jahmiyyah. The Ghulatul Ghulat أنكروا في حق الله تعالى الإثبات والنفي. So the Ghulatul Ghulat, they denied affirmation and negation, both of them. Okay, so they said we are neither going to affirm nor are we going to negate. فنفوا عنه الوجود والعدم. So they denied and they negated from Allah existence and non-existence. Okay, existence and non-existence. They said Allah does not exist, nor does He, nor is He non-existent. الوجود والعدم الاثنين. And they also negate from Allah life and death. So they said Allah is not alive, nor can we say that He is dead. Okay, والعلم والجهل. So they said, and then they said Allah Azza wa Jal, they also negate from Allah the fact that He is all knowledgeable and that He is ignorant. وقالوا, it's like these guys basically, it's like they heard and they heard the Jahmiyyah and how the Salaf refuted them, and then instead of following the madhab of the Salaf, they came with something even more absurd. Okay? And their shubha, when it was said to them, what is your proof for this? What is your shubha? What is your doubt? Remember, ikhwan fillah, these people, when they are trying to establish their madhab, okay, they're not going to say, and my shubha is this. They're going to say, my dalil is this, my evidence. But the reality of the situation is that it is a shubha. It is a misconception or a doubt. But when you're speaking to them or listening to them, they're not going to say, هذه شبهتي. They're not going to say, this is my shubha. It's a shubha because they're using a dalil, an evidence, or misinterpreting a dalil or an evidence. They're using a dalil aqli, a rational evidence that is obviously false. They're using maybe a dalil sam'i. These guys, they will not be using a dalil sam'i, but in normal circumstances they'll use a dalil sam'i that doesn't apply to what they're trying to say. So he says وشبهتهم أنهم اعتقدوا أنهم إن وصفوه بالإثبات شبهوه بالموجودات وإن وصفوه بالنفي شبهوه بالمعدومات. So their shubha is they're saying that if we describe Allah with affirmation, okay, if we describe Allah with affirmation, then we will be likening and comparing Allah to that which exists. Okay? And if we describe Allah with negation, we are likening Him and resembling Him to ma'dumat, things that are non-existent. If you remember the Jahmiyyah, what did they say? They said that we believe that Allah only exists. And if we give Him attributes, if we give Him names and attributes, then we are comparing Him to entities, mawjudat, things that are inexistent, things that are in existence. And we don't want to do that. That's the Jahmiyyah. Okay? So the Jahmiyyah, they said we will say that Allah exists without attributes. These guys are refuting the Jahmiyyah. Yani. They're saying basically, if we describe Allah with mawjudat, with things that exist, okay? If we describe Allah afwan with affirmation, we are likening Him and comparing Him with things that exist. Okay? And we don't want to do that. We don't want to fall into the error of the Jahmiyyah, these ghulat are saying. And if we describe Allah with negation, then we are comparing Him with ma'dumat, with things that don't exist. Al-ma'dum, yani something that doesn't exist. Okay? So how do we refute them? وَالرَّدُّ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنْ وُجُوهٍ. Number one, أن تسمية الله ووصفه بما سمى وصف به نفسه ليس تشبيها ولا يستلزم التشبيه. The same first, you've heard this before, صح? You've heard this before when refuting the Mu'tazila, when refuting the Jahmiyyah, when refuting the Asha'ir. This is not new to you. Okay? So, تسمية الله وصفه, naming Allah and describing Him with what He Himself has named Himself with or described Himself with is not considered tashbih and doesn't necessitate tashbih. Okay? Why? Because you all know the answer. Why? Because the ishtirak, yani the sharing or the shared usage of a name and an attribute doesn't necessitate tamathul al-musammayat wal-mawsufat, doesn't necessitate equality and equivalence in the named entity or the described entity. You've heard this from day one. Remember in the first lesson. So Allah Azza wa Jal, mathalan, to refresh your memories, Allah Azza wa Jal, He described Himself as Sami' Basir. ليس كمثله شيء هو السميع البصير. He also described the insan, the human being, فجعلناه سميعا بصيرا, as Sami' Basir, صح? But the sam' of the human and the basar of the human is not unlike the sam' and the basar of Allah Azza wa Jal, of course. So just because they share its usage in the name linguistically, doesn't mean that they are equal in reality. And then he says, تسميتكم ذلك تشبيها ليس إلا تمويها وتلبيسا على العامة والجهال. يعني he's saying, oh ghulat, you extreme Jahmiyyah and extreme philosophers, you claiming that this is tashbih, okay, is you're just trying to cause confusion, and you're trying to deceive the amma, the general layman and the ignorant ones. ولو قبلنا مثل هذه الدعوة الباطلة لأمكن كل مبطل أن يسمي الشيء الحق بأسماء ينفر بها الناس عن قبوله. نعم. الثاني number 2, أنه قد علم بضرورة العقل والحس أن الموجود الممكن لا بد له من موجد واجب الوجود. يعني he says that, يعني he's using now their own logical argument against them. Remember, they believe that Allah is واجب الوجود, and that everything else is ماذا ممكن الوجود. So he says that it is known out of necessity, okay, logically من الناحية العقلية, it is known out of necessity, and it is known from perception, from the hiss, يعني from perception, from the senses that Allah has given you, that if something is known as al-mawjud al-mumkin, يعني if something has the existence is a possibility, okay, the existence is a possibility, meaning that it can happen or it can't happen or it may not happen. We know that if something's existence is a possibility, then that thing requires another entity, an originator, a mujid, an originator, okay, which is wajib al-wujud, an originator whose existence is necessary, okay, and that's Allah Azza wa Jal. So Allah Azza wa Jal, His existence is necessary. This is a philosophical argument, and they say that in order for a being to be classed as a creator, then his existence has to be necessary. How do we know it's necessary? Meaning that his existence is self-sufficient, he's self-sufficient, self-subsistent or and pure and fully independent, and that he doesn't require another entity to originate it or to create it. Okay, and that ينطبق على الله تعالى, that's Allah Azza wa Jal. Okay, so they use these terms. Okay, and they could have said Allah Azza wa Jal refers, Allah Azza wa Jal, when He wants, this meaning, this ma'na is found in في قوله تعالى هو الأول والآخر والظاهر والباطن. Allah is the first, وهو الأول والآخر, He is the last. Or قل هو الله أحد, الله الصمد, الصمدية والقيومية والحياة. All of this mean what the philosophers are trying to say. But because these people don't have the nurul hidayah, they don't have the light of the Quran in their hearts, they use their logic, and sometimes their logic, sometimes yusib or sometimes la yusib. Sometimes some of their logic is accepted, okay, and in most cases it isn't. Okay, it's like, for example, the kahin and the arraf that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, that for every 100 things that they say, 99 is a kadhib, is false and a lie, and one could be correct. One could be correct, okay? So their logic is usually illogical, but in some situations, they do, some situations, some of their logic is correct, like here, for example. But just because this logic is correct doesn't mean that everything else is correct, okay? So he says, فَإِنَّنَا نَعْلَمُ حُدُوثَ الْمُحْدَثَاتِ وَنُشَاهِدُهَا وَلَا يُمْكِنُ أَن تَحْدُثَ بِدُونِ مُحْدِثٍ. He's saying that we see in the waqi', we see around us that everything has a cause. There's the laws of cause and effect. Everything around us, for something to happen, it must have something else must make it happen. صح? So for example, for you as an example, okay, when the leaf falls from the tree, usually there's a cause, there's a reason. Maybe an animal, for example, caused it to fall. Maybe it was the wind. Okay, so there is a reason for it. Okay, if you want children, if you want offspring, you have to come with the sabab, the reason, and that sabab is you have to go get married. Okay, so al-asbab wal-musabbabat. So what he's saying is, we can see huduth al-muhdathat wa nushahiduha. We can see things that are happening around us. Okay, things that occur. And وَلَا يُمْكِنْ أَن تَحْدُثْ بِدُونِ مُحْدِثٍ, and they can't occur except if something originates, something makes it happen. Okay? So this human being, the mumkin al-wujud, everything around us must have had a wajib al-wujud. Okay? وَلَا أَن تُحْدِثَ نَفْسَهَا بِنَفْسِهَا, and the mumkin al-wujud, the human being whose existence is a possibility, cannot create him or herself. Okay? As Allah Azza wa Jal says, أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ. Allah Azza wa Jal says, did they create, were they created from nothing, or did they create themselves? Here Allah is using a logical argument. Okay? A logical argument. There's three possibilities. The first possibility is, in terms of creation, that the person created himself, and this is impossible. The second possibility is they were created, or two possibilities. The second possibility is they created themselves. Okay? And the third and final possibility is that they were created by a creator. Three possibilities, not two, three possibilities. So here Allah says, أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ, were they created from nothing? أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ, or did they create? فتعين أن يكون لها خالق واجب الوجود وهو الله تعالى. Okay, ففي الوجود إذا موجودان. So then we know through logic that that there is a creator who is واجب الوجود, whose existence is necessary. So ففي الوجود إذا موجودان. So in existence there are two types of existences. أزلي واجب الوجود. Azali, eternal. And azali is a term that is not found in the Kitab and the Sunnah. The meaning is correct, and the word azal, يعني the term that you can use to refer to it in the Sharia is هو الأول. قل هو الله أحد قل هو الله الأحد الله الصمد هكذا هو الأول والآخر. So azal means eternal, everlasting. So there are two types of existences. An existence that is everlasting and eternal. واجب الوجود بنفسه. واجب الوجود is its existence is necessary بنفسه and is independent. يعني it's self-sufficient. And that's Allah Azza wa Jal. So Allah Azza wa Jal, His existence is eternal. Allah was always here. He will always be here. He has no beginning and He has no end. So huwa azali, everlasting, eternal. Wajib al-wujud, His existence is a necessity and necessary for the existence of everything else. Okay, for the existence of everything else. بنفسه يعني الصمد, قيوم, meaning that He is independent, مستغن عن غيره. He is independent, self-subsistent, and Allah Azza wa Jal is requires no one, requires nothing from anyone. Rather, He is the one who provides. Tamam. So that's the first type of existence. The second type of existence is muhdithun, existence that يعني muhdith means basically it يعني أحدث بعد أن لم يكن. Muhdith means something that happened and occurred يعني after it was يعني non-existent. Something that happened يعني. It's called muhdith. Okay? ممكن الوجود. So muhdith, ممكن الوجود. Their existence is a mumkin. It's a possibility. Okay, موجود بغيره is يعني موجود بغيره يعني is it exists through something else. ولا يلزم من نعم موجود بغيره يعني it's محدث, it's something that is originated, it came from something, okay, else. Its existence is ممكن, is a possibility. And موجود بغيره يعني it is not self-sufficient and not independent and relies on something else. ولا يلزم من اتفاقهما في مسمى الوجود أن يتفقا في خصائصه. So this is the محل الشاهد. So both these types of wujuds, these existences, يطلق عليهم اسم الوجود. Both of them exist. Allah exists, you exist. But after explaining this and after having learnt this, is your existence, is it similar to the existence of Allah Azza wa Jal? Of course not. I'll give you an even clearer example, okay? If that wasn't clear enough. There are living beings or small bacteria, okay? Or even small animals that you can see with your eyes, okay? That only live for minutes, seconds, some of them. Some of them live for only minutes, seconds, days, and they die. Khalas, they're no more. Okay, like for example the fly, for example, the small insects. Okay, and the human being lives for 60, 70, can live for up to 100 years. Sah? So is your existence similar to the existence of that bacteria? Of course not. There's a huge difference. But you both exist. You both exist. Okay? So the Shaykh, what he's saying is, and remember who we're refuting, the Ghulatul Ghulat, okay? What he's saying is that just because two entities exist, okay, it doesn't mean that their existence is equal, and it doesn't mean that their attributes are also equal. Okay? فإن وجود الواجب يخصه ووجود المحدث يخصه. For indeed, he says that the existence of the one whose existence is a necessity, يعني Allah, his existence is the existence that befits him, and the existence of the originated, the one created, okay, is an existence that befits him. Okay? فوجود الخالق, and then he explains how. فوجود الخالق واجب أزلي ممتنع الحدوث. يعني the existence of the creator is wajib, is necessary, azali, is eternal, ممتنع الحدوث, it is impossible to stop or cease. يعني Allah Azza wa Jalla, his existence will always be there, and it's impossible, ممتنع, it's impossible for Allah's existence to cease. Okay? أبدي يعني ممتنع الزوال. ووجود المخلوق, and the existence, the originated, the existence of the creation is ممكن حادث, is originated after non-existence, قابل للزوال, and it's a contingent existence, and it's subject to cessation. يعني it can stop. You, okay, will die one day. كل نفس ذائقة الموت. All of us will die. It's only a matter of time. So our existence is not an eternal existence. It is an existence that is contingent. Okay, it's an existence that will يعني is subject to cessation, is subject to stopping. Okay? So whoever does, the Shaykh says that whoever doesn't affirm the difference between them, okay, يعني فمن لم يثبت ما بينهما من الاتفاق والافتراق لزمه أن تكون الموجودات كلها إما أزلية واجبة الوجود بنفسها أو محدثة ممكنة الوجود بغيرها وكلاهما معلوم الفساد بالاضطرار. So if you don't differentiate between them, either you're going to think that all existences are eternal, which is false, and all existences are يعني are not eternal and are يعني are subject to cessation, which is also false. So you have to distinguish between both existences. Okay? تمام. نعم. So what is this? This second point is basically refuting what the Ghulatul Ghulat say and what they believe in when they say that if we affirm for Allah, or if we describe Allah with negation, then we are describing him then we are resembling him to that which is that which doesn't exist, that which matter doesn't exist. And we've learned previously that Allah Azza wa Jal, we affirm for him we affirm for him whatever he's affirmed for himself, and we negate from him that which he has negated from himself. Okay, so it's almost as though they don't distinguish between Allah Azza wa Jal and his creation. Actually, that's the case. They don't distinguish because in their minds they fell into tashbih, they fell into tamthil. They compared Allah Azza wa Jal to his creation in their minds, and they compared Allah Azza wa Jal to non-existence in their mind, because they failed to differentiate Allah Azza wa Jal from his creation. And as a result of this, they then proceeded to not distinguish between the different types of existences. And hence why the author rahimahullah ta'ala is explaining this second point. Number 3, okay, أن إنكارهم الإثبات والنفي يستلزم نفي النقيضين معا وهذا ممتنع لأن النقيضين لا يمكن اجتماعهما ولا ارتفاعهما. He's saying basically that by denying affirmation and negation, by rejecting affirmation and negation, okay, then that means that they are they are basically rejecting, or they are rejecting or denying two opposites. That necessitates that they are denying two opposites at the same time, and that's impossible. Okay, why? Because opposites cannot coexist. They cannot coexist at the same time, and they can't be absent also at the same time. One of them, لا بد من وجود أحدهما وحده. One of them has to exist. One of them has to exist. Okay? So because of this, because of the fact that they have ankaru al-ithbat wal-nafi, they have stripped Allah Azza wa Jal from all affirmative attributes and from all negative attributes, okay? They have now compared Allah Azza wa Jal and likened Him to ماذا ممتنعات, to things that are impossible for the mind to comprehend. Okay? Because the Shaykh says it's impossible for something to be la mawjood wala ma'doom. It's impossible for something to neither exist or to be non-existent at the same time. Are you with me, ikhwan fillah? It's impossible. It's impossible for something. You cannot say something مثلا غير موجود. لا موجود ولا معدوم. يعني how? It has to be either this or this. So هذا ارتفاع النقيضين. So they're يعني both opposites cannot be removed at the same time. So it's impossible for something to be لا موجود, either neither exist ولا معدوم, or not exist. ولا حي ولا ميت. It's impossible for something to say, we can't describe something and say it's neither alive nor is it ماذا dead. Okay? إلا, he says, أمرا يقدره الذهن, except by way of pure imagination from the mind. The mind can imagine whatever it wants. The mind ماذا can imagine whatever it wants. But just because the mind can imagine something doesn't mean that that thing is real and that thing ماذا is true. Okay? ووصف الله سبحانه بهذا مع كونه مخالفا لبداهة العقول كفر صريح ما جاء به الرسول. And describing Allah Azza wa Jal with something that's impossible, ممتنع, is كفر صريح, is pure disbelief, explicit kufr, والعياذ بالله. So are you with me, ikhwan fillah? So by them saying that we cannot describe Allah Azza wa Jal with ithbat, with affirmation and with negation. So they've said we're not going to affirm Allah's attributes, nor are we going to negate Allah's attributes. We're not going to say that Allah exists. We're not also going to say that Allah doesn't exist. We're not going to say that Allah is alive, nor are we going to say that He is dead. We're not going to say that He is alim, nor are we going to say that He is jahil, wal-'iyadhu billah. We're not going to say this, we're not going to say that. The Jahmiyyah, what did they say? Allah Azza wa Jalla, what did the Jahmiyyah say? Allahu laysa bimawjood. The Jahmiyyah afwan said Allahu mawjoodun bishart al-itlaq. Okay? That's what the Jahmiyyah said. But the Jahmiyyah then said Allahu Azza wa Jalla laysa bihay wala alim wala qadir wala sami'. So they stripped Allah of His negation. They stripped Allah of His attributes. So they described Allah with pure negation. The Ghulat, this sect here and this group here, they went one further. They said, okay, we say what the Jahmiyyah said, but we're also going to say the opposite. We're going to say Allah, we're not going to say Allah is Hayy, nor we're going to say that He is Mayyit. Okay? So the Jahmiyyah said, Allah laysa bihayy. These guys said, we're not going to say He's Hayy, we're not going to say He's Mayyit. We're not going to say He is mawjood, nor are we going to say that He is ma'doom. So nafu, so basically ankaru an-nafi wal-ithbat. They rejected affirmation and negation, both of them. And the Shaykh says that's kufrun sarih. فَإِنْ قَالُوا, then if they then respond to us after saying this to them, if they respond to us and they say نَفْيُ النَّقِيضَيْنِ ممتنع عما كان قابلا لهما أما ما كان غير قابل لهما كالجماد الذي لا يقبل الاتصاف بالسمع والصمم فإنه يمكن نفيهما عنه فيقال ليس بسميع ولا أصم. So they came with this new shubha now. They said that negating opposites is only possible in things that are capable of both. Negating opposites. What you said, O Sunni, okay? Because remember the Sunni, what did he say? Inkarhum yani what yani when you deny both affirmation and negation, then that necessitates, okay, the absence of two opposites. That necessitates the absence of two opposites, and that's impossible. Because two opposites, yani opposites, either they cannot coexist together at the same time, and they cannot be absent together at the same time. They can't be there at the same time, both of them, and both of them cannot not be there at the same time. So what was their response? They said, that's true, okay? Negating opposites, they said, is only possible in things that are capable of both, okay? As for things that are not capable of both, then it's possible. We asked them for an example, and they said the example is al-jamad, inanimate objects. Inanimate objects, like the wall, for example, al-jidar. So they said the jidar, the wall, is neither alive nor dead. This is their response to Ahl Sunnah. The wall is neither alive nor dead. يعني and that's that they said that negates what you, O Sunni, said. So imagine, ikhwani fillah, now they are describing Allah Azza wa Jal, they're comparing Allah to a wall. يعني subhanallah. يعني these people, subhanallah, وقعوا في كفر, يعني في كفريات, يعني, and Shaykh Islam later on will tell us that their kufr is worse than the kufr of the Nasara and the Yahud. So what was the response of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah? So for example, also another example is the wall, مثلا, we can't say the wall hears, nor is it deaf. So the wall cannot hear, يعني we can't say we can say that the wall, يعني مثلا, neither hears nor is it deaf. And هذا صحيح, يعني that's what they're saying. So how do we refute them? We refute them from 4 different angles. Number 1, أن هذا لا يصح فيما قالوه من نفي الوجود والعدم فإن تقابلهما تقابل سلب وإيجاب باتفاق العقلاء فإذا انتفى أحدهما لزم ثبوت الآخر فإذا قيل ليس بموجود لزم أن يكون معدوما. So basically we say to them that is incorrect in their rejection of existence and adam and non-existence. فإن تقابلهما, he says, for these two opposites, they are only opposites by way of mutual negation and affirmation. They are only opposites by way of mutual negation and affirmation. Okay? يعني فإن تقابلهما تقابل سلب وإيجاب باتفاق العقلاء. Okay? فإذا انتفى أحدهما, so if one of them is non-existent, لزم ثبوت الآخر, then the other has to be in existence. So if we say neither, يعني if we say مثلا regarding Allah or regarding anything, ليس بموجود, it is not non-existent, okay? لزم أن يكون معدوما, then it means it has to be, يعني if we say ليس بموجود, if we say it doesn't exist, then it has to be معدوم. It has to be something that is معدوم, that is non-existent. Okay? It has to be something that is معدوم. وإذا قيل ليس بمعدوم, and if we say that it is not non-existent, لازم أن يكون موجودا, it has to be in existence. أعانكم الله. فلا يمكن نفيهما معا ولا إثباتهما معا. So it's impossible to reject them both at the same time, nor is it possible to affirm them both at the same time. So basically, just to simplify it, what the Shaykh is saying here, rahimahullah ta'ala, is that what their claim, okay, that both opposites can be removed and lifted at the same time because of the wall, the example of the wall, doesn't make any logical sense at all. Okay? Why? Okay? because all of the uqala, all of the non يعني the uqala, people of rational thinking, all of them say that يعني فإن يعني تقابلهما تقابل سلب وإيجاب باتفاق العقلاء. يعني يعني these two are opposites. These two are opposites, يعني whose mutual negation and affirmation is necessary. Mutual negation and affirmation is necessary for the wall with regards to the jidar. Okay, and this is by consensus, by the consensus of the uqala. So and not يعني not every entity or jamad has this rule. So by using one example, it doesn't mean that that example is the rule of is the rule. It's the exception to the rule. Okay, and so that's the first wajh. The second wajh is even clearer. So if this wajh, for example, is a bit complicated and complex, the second one is inshallah ta'ala clearer. أن قولهم في الجماد إنه لا يقبل الاتصاف بالحياة والموت والعمى والبصر والسمع والصمم ونحوها مما يمكن تقابله تقابل عدم وملكه قول اصطلاحي لا يغير الحقائق مردود. يعني their statement with regards to inanimate objects, okay, that they cannot be described with life or death, with sight or blindness, with hearing or with deafness, okay, with things that basically are opposites, okay. This is only in their terminology, and it doesn't really change the fact of the matter. Why? Because this is rejected. Because Allah Azza wa Jal, He told us, and He mentioned in certain places in the Quran, that there are certain inanimate objects that can be described with these descriptions. An example is the staff of the Prophet Musa alayhi salam. Okay, Allah Azza wa Jal, He made the staff of Musa into a hayya تلقف ما صنعه السحرة, a hayya, a serpent that ate or consumed what the magicians did. Okay, so the staff of Musa was ماذا? Was an inanimate object, yet Allah Azza wa Jal made it into something that was hayy, alive. Okay, and also that's the first evidence. The second evidence is وصف الله تعالى الجماد بأنه ميت. Allah Azza wa Jal, He described inanimate objects that they are dead and not alive. يعني مثلا في قوله والذين يدعون من دون الله لا يخلقون شيئا وهم يخلقون أموات غير أحياء. So Allah Azza wa Jal, He mentioned والذين يدعون من دون, يعني Allah Azza wa Jal described what they were worshipping besides Allah Azza wa Jal, يعني from the idols and the stones and هكذا, as أموات, as dead, غير أحياء, not alive. Okay, so even their qawl, their jamad, jazakallah khair, even what they said regarding inanimate object is rejected, because Allah described يعني inanimate objects as dead. Okay, نعم. وأخبر أن الأرض يوم القيامة تحدث أو تحدث أخبارها. And Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned that the earth will speak about what happened on it on Yawm al-Qiyamah, what all of the things that occurred on top of it. Okay, وهي ما عمل عليها من خير وشر, all of the good and bad that was done on top of it, the earth will speak about it. Here in this place so and so made sujood and prayed. Here in this place so and so did this specific sin, and so on and so forth. Okay, that's the second wajh. The third wajh is أن الذي يقبل الاتصاف بالكمال أكمل من الذي لا يقبله. يعني the third one is describing something with perfection is better than something that accepts perfection is better than something that doesn't accept perfection. Okay, فما يقبل أن يوصف بالعلم والقدرة والسمع والبصر, يعني an entity that can accept perfect attributes such as العلم والقدرة والسمع والبصر is better. Okay, ولو كان خاليا منه أكمل مما لا يقبل ذلك. That entity is better than another entity that cannot accept these attributes, such as the jidar, such as inanimate objects. Okay, فقولكم, so when they say إن الرب لا يقبل أن يتصف بذلك يستلزم أن يكون أنقص من الإنسان القابل لذلك حيث شبهتموه بالجماد الذي لا يقبله. So the غلاة الغلاة, we say to them, what you're saying regarding Allah Azza wa Jal, that Allah Azza wa Jal, His entity, His essence cannot accept perfect attributes. It's impossible for Allah to be given perfect attributes, is an insult to Allah Azza wa Jal. And that means that Allah in your eyes is anqas, is more deficient than the human being whom you know accepts these attributes. A human being can be described with hearing, with sight, with qudra, hakada, and so on and so forth. Yet the ghulatul ghulat are saying that Allah cannot be described with these things. Okay? So what the lisanu qawlihim is that what they're trying to say basically, or what they're saying basically in essence, is that the human being is more perfect than Rabbul Alameen wal iyadhu billah, and that's kufr. Number 4, أنه إذا كان يمتنع انتفاء الوجود والعدم فانتفاء عدم قبول ذلك أشد. يعني إذا كان يمتنع, if it's impossible يعني to negate existence and non-existence, okay, if it's impossible to negate existence and non-existence, then that means it's انتفاء عدم قبول ذلك أشد. يعني it's what's more absurd is to think that this can be accepted. انتفاء عدم قبول ذلك أشد. Okay, يعني مثلا إذا كان يعني it's impossible to affirm or يعني it's impossible to negate existence and non-existence at the same time, which means that it's impossible for the mind and the intellect to comprehend what they are trying to establish. So إن الرب لا يقبل الاتصاف بالوجود والعدم مستلزما لتشبيهه وعلى هذا يكون قولهم إن الرب لا يقبل الاتصاف بالوجود والعدم. يعني what they're saying basically is that Allah cannot be described with existence and with non-existence. That basically necessitates that they're describing Allah with mada, with impossibilities, with mumtani'at, with things that are mada, impossible. So that is mada غُلَاتُ الغُلَات. And لا شك في ذلك يا إخواني في الله, that يعني even trying to explain their qawl is very difficult. يعني subhanallah, trying to explain what they are saying or their shubha is very difficult because it's something that the mind finds it difficult to comprehend. If someone who is upon the fitrah, who is upon the natural disposition, would automatically reject this. Alhamdulillah alladhi hadana. The next fasl is basically is speaking about the Shaykh is going to now summarize all of these 4 madahib, okay, and the crimes that they fell into, the violations that they fell into. He says, علم مما سبق أن كل طائفة من هؤلاء الطوائف الأربع واقعون في محاذير. So we know from what has preceded that every sect, every group from these 4 groups, they fell into certain violations or crimes. Number 1, okay, this is very important for you to understand and memorize, inshallah. Number 1, مخالفة طريق السلف. Very simple. They went against the path or the methodology or the manhaj of the Salaf. Number 2, تعطيل النصوص عن المراد بها. They stripped the text of their intended meaning. They stripped the text of their intended meaning. الثالث, number 3, تحريفها إلى معان غير مراد بها. They stripped Allah Azza wa Jal of His attributes of perfection. عفوا, number 3, تحريفها إلى معان غير مراد بها, يعني غير مراد بها. They distorted the text towards wrong meanings. Towards ماذا wrong meanings. Number 4 تعطيل الله عن صفات الكمال التي تضمنتها هذه النصوص. They stripped Allah Azza wa Jal of attributes of perfection. Okay? And number 5 تناقض طريقتهم. The contradiction, there was contradiction in their madhab, in what they affirmed and in what they negated. And these are the 5 mistakes that they fell into. The 5 mistakes that they fell into. And then the Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala, he then goes on to say, he then speaks about those who made ghulu in janib al-ithbat, those who made ghulu and were extreme in their affirmation. Who are they? Does anyone remember? The mumathila. Okay, the mumathila. So he speaks about them. So the mumathila, they made ghulu in janib al-ithbat, and they had shortcomings, and they were negligent in mada, in janib ish. In which janib? Nafi, in negation. So that's mada, the mumathila. So we say to the mumathila, or those who made ghulu in janib al-ithbat, athbit ma nafayt. Affirm what you have negated. مع نفي التشبيه, while at the same time negating tashbih. While at the same time يعني not falling into tashbih. So أثبت what you have يعني affirm what you have negated without falling into ماذا? Tashbih. Just like you have affirmed what you have affirmed, okay, by not falling into tashbih at the same time. So the mumathila, they fell into tashbih, صح? غلوا في جانب الإثبات فشبهوا الله تعالى بخلقه. So they made ghulu and they were extreme in their affirmation until they compared Allah to His creation. So the Shaykh is saying, why don't you affirm what you have negated? Why don't you affirm, okay, what you have negated? Okay, while at the same time avoiding tashbih. Okay? أثبت ما نفيت. يعني affirm what you have negated while at the same time avoiding tashbih. Just like you've affirmed what you affirmed while at the same time avoiding tashbih. So why don't you do the same thing? So the mumathila, they affirmed, صح? They kept affirming and affirming and affirming, and then they didn't really do much negation. Okay? So they affirmed for Allah His attributes. Okay? And they compared Allah Azza wa Jal to His creation. And then they said, we are comparing Allah to His creation. Yadullah is like the yad of the makhluqat. Why? Because Allah Azza wa Jal spoke to us in the Arabic language, and we have to understand the Quran. We have to understand these names and attributes of Allah according to what we can sense and perceive with our senses. So that was the shubha of the mumathila, remember. Okay? So they affirmed. Okay? So the Shaykh is saying, why don't you affirm what you have negated? Okay? مع نفي التشبيه, while at the same time negating tashbih. So affirm what you have negated. What did the mumathila negate? What did they negate? No, the mumathila. The mumathila, did they negate anything? Let's go back to the first madhab. Okay? ممثلة ومعطلة. So page 21. الممثلة وطريقتهم أنهم أثبتوا لله الصفات على وجه يماثل صفات المخلوقين فقالوا لله وشبهتهم في ذلك أن الله خاطبنا في القرآن. نعم. أما السمع فقد قال الله تعالى ليس كمثله شيء وهو السميع البصير وقال فلا تضربوا لله الأمثال وأما العقل فلا تفعلوا. So the Shaykh doesn't mention
extreme affirmation.
Sorry?
Extreme affirmation.
نعم, we know that, but what did they negate?
They negated عدم المماثلة.
No, هم ممثلة أصلا يعني they didn't, it doesn't say that they negated anything. أن القول مثل بين الخالق والمخلوق يسمى النقص أن القول أما الحس No, he's talking about the ممثلة. يعني he could be speaking about الأشاعرة أنهم أثبتوا الله فأثبتوا الله أسماء بعض الصفات وأثبتوا الله من الصفات 7 صفات. نعم.
He just said short in negation. He just said they come short in negation.
نعم. نعم. So نعم. So it could be أثبت ما نفيت ومع نفي التشبيه. نعم. Yes, it could be the Asha'ira. نعم. It could be ماذا the Asha'ira. So he might be speaking, he's Allahu A'lam, here he's referring to the Mumathila and maybe the Asha'ira. Okay? The Asha'ira, because the Asha'ira they negated, صح? What did they negate? They only affirmed for Allah 7 attributes and they negated what? The rest. Tamam. So Athbit, affirm what you have negated whilst at the same time avoiding tashbih, just like you affirmed what you have affirmed, يعني the 7 attributes, whilst at the same time يعني avoiding tashbih. Do you understand now, صح? So if we understand this to mean the Asha'ira and the first type of Mu'attila, so the Asha'ira, they affirmed 7 attributes and they negated every other attribute. So the Shaykh is saying, Athbit, يعني affirm what you have negated, يعني every other attribute, not just the 7, okay? Whilst avoiding tashbih. Because what do the Asha'ira say? The Asha'ira don't affirm what they've negated. The Asha'ira don't affirm what they've negated for fear of tashbih. صح? So now he's saying, affirm what you have negated whilst avoiding tashbih, just like you have affirmed, يعني those 7 attributes, what you have affirmed, whilst at the same time avoiding tashbih. Is that clear, إخواني في الله? Okay, تمام. As for جانب النفي, the جانب النفي, ونقول في جانب النفي, with regards to the يعني negation, we say to them, he says, أنفي أو ما أثبت, negate what you have affirmed, okay? خوفا من التشبيه, for fear of falling into tashbih, just like you negated what you negated for fear of falling into tashbih, otherwise you would be inconsistent. Okay, so أنفي ما أثبت. The Mu'attila, this is the Mu'tazila and the Jahmiya, negate what you have affirmed for fear of falling into tashbih. So what did they affirm? What did they affirm? Even this also falls into the Asha'ira as well. يعني. What did they affirm? They affirmed, مثلا, they said that Allah is exists. So they affirmed existence. Okay? The Asha'ira مثلا affirmed قوة. They said يد الله مغلولة. عفوا. They said that the yad of Allah means ماذا? القوة. They said that محبة means ماذا? إيش؟ إرادة الثواب أو الثواب. صح? So infi, negate what you have affirmed, okay, for fear of tashbih, just like you negated what you negated for fear of falling into tashbih. So be consistent, basically. Be ماذا? Consistent. Then he mentions the correct opinion. القول الفصل المضطرد السالم من التناقض ما كان عليه سلف الأمة. So he says that the correct opinion, المضطرد السالم من التناقض, that is free from any contradiction or inconsistency, is what the Salaf al-Ummah were upon. That's from the Sahaba, the Tabi'un, the Atba'u Tabi'in. من إثبات ما أثبته الله تعالى لنفسه, by affirming يعني what Allah has affirmed for Himself. من الأسماء والصفات, from the names and attributes. إثباتا بلا تمثيل, affirmation that contains no comparison or resemblance or likening to His creation. تنزيها بلا تعطيل, and transcendence and transcendence of and the belief that Allah is free from any imperfection, بلا تعطيل, that doesn't contain any denial of His names and attributes. وإجراء النصوص على ظاهرها على الوجه اللائق بالله عز وجل, and to apply the evidences according to their apparent meaning in a manner that is befitting Allah Azza wa Jal, without falling into tahrif or ta'til or takyif or tamthil. And he says that this madhab, this is the correct madhab, and this madhab becomes even more clearer by understanding aslain wa mathalain, two principles and two examples, and a khatima and a conclusion. So what's that? Two principles, two examples, and a khatima. So as for the aslan, the first asl is أن يقال لمن يثبت بعض الصفات دون بعض. So this is speaking to those who affirm some attributes and deny others. Who are they? The Asha'ira. We say to them, this is the principle. القول في بعض الصفات كالقول في بعض. القول في بعض الصفات كالقول في بعض. ما معنى هذا? Does anyone know? نعم.
If you affirm some of the attributes, then it is upon you to affirm all of them.
All of them. أحسنت. نعم. القول في بعض الصفات, meaning that whatever you say in some attributes, you have to be consistent with the rest of the attributes. Okay? Meaning, if someone affirms something for Allah Azza wa Jal from the attributes, if you affirm for Allah some attributes, you have to affirm all of the other attributes. And if you negate from Allah Azza wa Jal some attributes, you have to reject. If you deny some attributes, you have to deny everything else. So you have to be consistent. You cannot basically affirm some and deny others, or deny some and affirm others. You have to be consistent. Okay? Example, mithal. Okay, so if the person we're speaking to, so if someone, for example, affirms for Allah haqiqatul irada, the will of Allah, if someone affirms the will of Allah Azza wa Jal, and at the same time they reject al-ghadab, they reject Allah's anger. They reject Allah's anger. So they affirmed will and they rejected the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal gets angry. وَغَضِبَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ, يعني Allah Azza wa Jal mentions in the Quran. And what do they say regarding ghadab? What ta'wil do they give to the verses that speak about Allah's anger? They say iradatul intiqam, يعني Allah wants His will to punish, or al-intiqam nafsu, or Allah's يعني seeking revenge or avenging. Okay, so ghadab, this is a person who affirms irada haqiqiyya, the true will of Allah Azza wa Jalla, the will of Allah, whilst at the same time negating al-ghadab or denying the attribute of al-ghadab. How do they deny it? Through distortion. What is the distortion that they make? It's ta'wil, false interpretation of the sifa. What is the false interpretation? They say that ghadab is iradatul intiqam, is Allah seeking or is His will to punish. His will to punish. So this tahrif leads to ta'til. So we say to this person, لا فرق بين ما أثبته من حقيقة الإرادة وما نفيته من حقيقة الغضب. فإن كان إثبات حقيقة الغضب يستلزم التمثيل فإثبات حقيقة الإرادة يستلزمه أيضا. We say to them, there's no difference between what you have affirmed, which is حقيقة الإرادة, which is Allah's will, okay? And there's no difference between that and what you have denied from Allah's, what you have denied, which is haqiqatul ghadab, which is the anger of Allah. So if by affirming ghadab, by affirming anger, the anger of Allah, if you feel that this necessitates tashbih, okay, or tamthil, then also you have to also be consistent, and you have to say that affirming irada and affirming the will of Allah also necessitates tashbih. Do you understand, ikhwan? So both of them you have to be consistent. Why? لأن القول في بعض الصفات كالقول في البعض الآخر. Why? Because speaking about some attributes, okay, whatever you say about some attributes, you have to be consistent about the others. If you affirm some attributes, you have to affirm the others. If you negate some attributes, you have to negate the others. Okay? And وإن كان إثبات حقيقة الإرادة لا يستلزمه. If you're saying that affirming irada and affirming the will of Allah doesn't necessitate tashbih or tamthil, then you have to say that affirming ghadab and the anger of Allah also doesn't necessitate تشبيه. Why? لأن القول في أحدهما كالقول في الآخر. Why? Because speaking about one of them is similar to speaking about the other. So you have to يلزمك إما إثبات الجميع وإما بنفي الجميع. So either you have to affirm all of it or you have to ماذا? Negate all of it. Do you understand the argument? Yeah? So this is what we say to them, and this goes for every other صفة. And this goes for the Ash'ari مثلا. If he says أنا أثبت صفة الكلام, I affirm صفة الكلام, but I'm not going to affirm صفة الرحمة, for example. We say القول في صفة الكلام كالقول في صفة الرحمة. إن أثبتت صفة الكلام فيلزمك أن تثبت صفة الرحمة. What if you have affirmed صفة الكلام, you have to affirm صفة الرحمة. Okay? And if you're saying that صفة الكلام, for example, if you're saying that صفة الرحمة مثلا means something مثلا, يعني if you're making تأويل of صفة الرحمة, okay, بمثلا الثواب أو إرادة الثواب, or يعني with reward, because you fear that by affirming صفة الرحمة you're going to fall into tashbih, then you have to also have the same fear when affirming صفة الكلام. You can't pick and choose. Okay? So if then they say الإرادة التي أثبتها لا تستلزم التمثيل لأنني أعني بها إرادة تليق بالله عز وجل لا تماثل إرادة المخلوق. If they say that the irada, the will that I am affirming, is a will that is befitting of Allah Azza wa Jal, and I am not affirming it in a manner that in a manner that causes tamthil or tashbih. If this is what they say, we respond to them by saying, then you should also affirm for Allah a ghadab, an anger, okay, in a manner that is befitting His Majesty and that doesn't cause likening or resembling to the creation. We give them the same answer. Do you understand, Ikhwan? We give them the same answer. If then they respond to us and they say that ghadab or anger is غليان دم القلب لطلب الانتقام وهذا لا يليق بالله تعالى. If they say that anger is ماذا? غليان دم القلب, يعني anger is the boiling of the blood in the heart, okay, and it is to seek revenge. So when يعني anger is the boiling of the blood in the heart in order to seek revenge, and this is something that we cannot ascribe to Allah. If this is their response, we then say to them, similarly, irada and the will that you have affirmed is ميل النفس إلى جلب منفعة ودفع مضرة, is the heart, is the nafs, the soul, inclining to that which is of benefit to it, okay, or that which or repelling that which is of harm. This is irada, and this isn't something that is befitting of Allah Azza wa Jal. So you could say the same thing with regards to irada. If they say no, this is the irada of the creation, we say to them يعني the ghadab that you've mentioned, which is the boiling of the blood, okay, the person becoming so angry that their blood boils, this anger is befitting of the creation, and it is not an anger that is befitting of Allah Azza wa Jal, okay, and so every answer that they give us, we use that answer and apply it to the attribute that they have denied, okay. So al-qawlu fi jami' as-sifat, so and we say this with regards to every attribute. If he says أثبت ما أثبته من الصفات بدلالة العقل عليه, I affirm what I have affirmed through logic and rationale, we respond to him with the three responses that we mentioned previously. Who can quickly repeat those three responses that we mentioned, that the Shaykh mentioned, to refute the dalil of the aql? Who can repeat it? نعم. Number one. لا, no. عقل. لا, not that one, no. Good. The first is that this is not the tariqah of the Salaf. Okay, it's not the path of the Salaf. نعم.
Using aql in umur ghaybiyah doesn't make sense.
نعم. The second is using aql in umur ghaybiyah doesn't make sense. And what was the third one? نعم. نعم. People have different عقول. العقول متفاوتة. Not every aql and not every intellect is the same. We're going to stop here, inshallah. I think it's time for Salatul Isha, okay? And then we will continue tomorrow from